I didn't know you were like this.
She hated the Mafia boss, until a plane crash forced them to survive together on a deserted island. Now, survival means trusting the most dangerous man of her life and resisting a desire she never knew existed. Will they make it?
Welcome to my library. I'm Lena, and our story is just beginning.
Chapter 1. The Last Flight.
We're going down!
I hated everything about that plane. The smell of expensive leather, the tense silence that only dirty money can buy, and most of all, I hated being there, trapped between two men who represented everything I'd spent 9 years trying to forget. My father, Giovanni Russo, sitting to my left in that impeccable suit, with eyes that hadn't blinked in decades. To the right, in the seat across from me, Bernardo Provezan watched me with that crooked smile that always made me want to claw out my own eyes. Or his. I still hadn't decided which would be more satisfying. I was 15, the first time I saw him. He was 23, already carrying that predator aura that made grown men lower their heads. I remember thinking he was the personification of everything I despised in this world. 10 years later, my opinion hadn't changed 1 millimeter. Still pretending to be normal, princess? His voice cut through the silence like broken glass, that Italian accent loaded with irony. Princess. He always called me that, knowing I hated it, knowing it made me remember who I used to be. I took a deep breath, counting to 3 before looking at him. Mistake. Those dark eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl with pure rage. He was leaning back, completely relaxed, as if we were having coffee instead of flying to some sordid meeting on a private island. Still pretending to have a soul, Provezan? I replied, keeping my voice sweet as poison. His lips curved more. He liked it when I fought back. Psychopath. You two. My father didn't even look up from his phone. Behave. Behave. As if we were children fighting in the back seat. As if I hadn't been forced to be here under threat of never hearing his voice again. As if Bernardo wasn't literally a killer dressed in Armani. I turned my gaze to the window, watching the clouds pass. 9 years. 9 years living as Isla, the ordinary teacher, living in a tiny apartment, pretending I didn't wake up in cold sweats with nightmares of blood and betrayal. And one call from my father had been enough to drag me back. You're too quiet. Bernardo's voice again, lower now, almost intimate. I hated when he did that, when he spoke as if we were alone. Planning my death? Always. I didn't look at him, but nothing creative. Today, I'm thinking of something simple. Drowning, maybe. He laughed. Actually laughed. That deep sound that reverberated in his chest. Drowning. Ironic. I didn't understand the comment, but I didn't care either. Bernardo Provezan could be many things. Dangerous, powerful, absolutely terrifying, but he was also annoyingly enigmatic, always speaking in codes, always 3 steps ahead of everyone. It was exhausting. The turbulence started 15 minutes later. At first, just light bumps that made my stomach turn. I didn't like flying. Never did. Something about being suspended in the air with no control over anything made me want to scream. We're all good, gentlemen. The pilot's voice sounded calm over the intercom. Just an unexpected storm. We'll go around it. My fingers closed around the armrests. Go around? Right. As if storms could be dodged like obstacles on a racetrack. Scared? Bernardo asked, and this time there was something different in his voice, almost like genuine concern, but that was impossible. Men like him didn't worry. No, I lied, gripping tighter until my knuckles turned white. Another turbulence. Stronger. The plane shook violently, and my heart raced. I closed my eyes, trying to remember the breathing techniques I learned in therapy. Inhale, exhale. You're fine. You're always fine. Isla. My father's voice, this time with a touch of something that could be fear. I opened my eyes and saw him dropping his phone, looking at the window with a tense expression. Then I heard it. A sound I'll never forget. A muffled, visceral explosion that made the entire plane shake. I turned my head in time to see orange flames licking the left wing through the window. The engine was on fire. Everything happened too fast and too slow at the same time. The oxygen masks dropping from the ceiling like yellow serpents. The pilot's screams over the intercom. Words my brain refused to process. Mayday, mayday, we're going down. We're going down! Put on the masks! One of the security guards shouted, but his voice seemed to come from far away, muffled by the roar of wind and metal tearing apart. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't grab the damn mask. I tried once, twice, 3 times, and then large, firm hands grabbed my face, turning me forcefully. Bernardo, He was so close I could see the lines around his dark eyes, the absurd intensity in that gaze. "Look at me," he ordered, putting the mask on my face with precise movements. "Just look at me, Isla." I should have pushed him away, should have screamed that I didn't need his help, but I was too terrified, so I just obeyed, keeping my gaze fixed on his while the plane plummeted. That's when I saw it. My father, for the first time in his life, with his hands clasped and lips moving in silent prayer. Giovanni Russo, the man who built an empire on corpses, was praying. We were going to die. The plane spun, rolled, and my stomach rose to my throat. I heard screams. I don't know if mine or others. Metal tearing, glass shattering. And through it all, Bernardo still held me, one arm wrapped around my head, pressing me against his chest while the world fell apart. "Don't touch me!" I tried to scream, but my voice came out muffled by the mask. "Shut up and hold on!" he screamed back, and for the first time, I heard real fear in his voice. The impact was brutal. Water. We fell in the water. The force was so violent that everything went dark for a moment, and when I regained consciousness, I was submerged, surrounded by a blue and cold silence that contrasted absurdly with the chaos of seconds before. My lungs burned. I opened my eyes underwater and saw debris sinking around me like falling stars. Pieces of the plane, a suitcase, a shoe, a body floating on its back, too still to be alive. I needed to surface. I needed to breathe. I kicked hard, propelling myself upward, toward the light that shone above the surface like a distant promise of air. When my head finally broke through the water, I choked, spitting salt water and sucking in air as if I'd never have the chance to breathe again. Around me, the ocean was covered in debris, pieces of metal floating, fire burning in patches of fuel, and bodies, 2 bodies floating face down, white shirts stained red. "Dad!" I screamed, spinning in the water, searching desperately. "Dad!" Nothing, just ocean, debris, and deafening silence. "Swim! Now!" Bernardo's voice cut through my panic. I turned and saw him a few meters away, blood running from a cut on his forehead, but alive, completely alive and swimming towards something that took seconds for me to identify. An island, small, covered in vegetation, but solid, firm ground. I didn't think. I just started swimming, desperate strokes that seemed to get me nowhere. My muscles screamed. My lungs burned. The dress I was wearing tangled around my legs like tentacles trying to pull me back down. An explosion behind me. I turned in time to see what was left of the plane sink completely, sucked down by the waves in a spiral of foam and fire. I kept swimming. When my fingers finally touched sand, I almost cried. I dragged myself out of the water like a wounded animal, crawling until I was far enough from the tide to collapse face down on the beach. Breathing. I could only focus on breathing. Inhale, exhale, repeat. I coughed, vomited salt water, and coughed more. My entire body shook so violently my teeth chattered. Cold. I was so cold. "Get up," Bernardo's voice, rough and breathless. I turned my head. He was on his knees in the sand a few meters from me, one hand pressing the wound on his forehead, white shirt completely soaked and stuck to his torso. He looked like a war survivor. He looked human. For the first time, Bernardo Provenzon looked human. "My father!" My voice came out broken. I didn't see my father." His eyes met mine, and something passed through that expression. Something that could have been pity if Bernardo were capable of feeling pity. "If he's not here," he said slowly, choosing each word, "he's dead." The truth hit me like a punch to the stomach. No, it couldn't be true. My father was indestructible. My father was Giovanni Russo. My father was... I started to cry. I also slapped him. Didn't plan it. My hand just flew and hit his face hard enough to make my palm sting. Bernardo didn't even blink. Just looked at me, blood running between his fingers, expression impossible to read. "I'm sorry," he said, and for the first time, he sounded sincere. "But we need to survive. Now." Survive. The word echoed in my mind as I finally forced myself to sit up, looking around. The island was small, wild, with no signs of civilization, just dense jungle, white sand beach, and the infinite ocean surrounding us. I looked at Bernardo. He was already standing, checking what he had in his pockets. A knife. Always carried a knife. Paranoid psychopath. Lighter, too wet to work. Nothing else. I had even less. A torn dress. Shoes lost somewhere in the ocean. Not even a bobby pin. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and red like an open wound. The first night was coming, and we had nothing. No food, no water, no shelter, no rescue coming because no one knew where we were. Just the two of us. Ila Russo and Bernardo Provenzon. Enemies, rivals, and apparently the only survivors of an accident that should have killed us. He extended his hand to me. I looked at that hand, then at his face. Salt water dripped from his dark hair. His eyes were different now, without that constant arrogance. Just tired, human. "Come on," he said, voice low. "We need to find shelter before it gets dark." I didn't take his hand. I got up on my own, wobbling a little, but steady. I had survived for 9 years away from this world. Survived trauma, nightmares, a family that devoured its own children. I was going to survive this too, even if it meant surviving alongside the man I hated most in the world. Chapter 2, The First 3 Days.
Help me, don't leave!
I woke up expecting to be in my apartment, expecting to hear the annoying cell phone alarm, the traffic noise outside, normal life returning like it always did after nightmares. I opened my eyes and saw palm leaves, sky too blue, and Bernardo Provenzan standing a few meters away, examining the jungle line as if searching for something. It wasn't a nightmare. My father was dead. I was trapped on an island, and the only human being for miles was literally a mob boss. I sat up slowly, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. I was covered in sand. Salt crystallized on my skin. The torn dress stuck to my body uncomfortably. My hair probably looked like a bird's nest. Not that it mattered. There were no mirrors here, no civilization, no hope. "You're awake." Bernardo turned, and for the first time, I noticed he'd removed his jacket. The white shirt, once impeccable, was torn in several places, stained with dried blood and salt water. The wound on his forehead had stopped bleeding, but looked ugly. "I thought you'd sleep all day." "My father died yesterday." My voice came out harsher than I intended. "Sorry for not waking up chipper." He looked at me for a long moment, those dark eyes impossible to read, then simply said, "We need water. Now. You're not gonna say anything about him?" "What do you want me to say?" Bernardo crossed his arms. "That I'm sorry? I am. That it's tragic? It is. That I wish things were different? I do. But none of that changes the fact that we have 0 drinking water and will die of dehydration in 3 days if we don't find something." Rage exploded in my chest like a bomb. "Don't you feel anything?" "Feeling doesn't change anything." His voice remained annoyingly calm. "Surviving does. You're a monster." I stood, ignoring how my legs trembled. A cold, calculating, heartless monster. Yes, he didn't deny it, and somehow that made me even angrier. "But a living monster. You want to be a dead saint, princess? Because that's where we're headed if we keep standing here having emotional moments." I wanted to slap him again, wanted to scream until my throat bled, but a small, rational part hated admitting he was right. Dead people didn't process grief, and I definitely didn't want to die on this godforsaken island. "Fine," I forced through gritted teeth. "Let's find water." Something passed through his eyes. Approval, maybe, or surprise that I hadn't continued the argument. "Come on." I think I heard running water earlier. Following Bernardo through the jungle was surreally strange. He moved with confidence, pushing branches, checking the terrain, completely in control, even in an environment where he should be as lost as me. I stumbled behind, barefoot, cursing under my breath every time a branch scratched me or a sharp rock cut my foot. "You okay?" he asked without looking back. Great. Loving this. Sarcasm dripped from every word. Always wanted to hike barefoot on a deserted island after surviving a plane crash. "Your humor still works." Good sign. I didn't respond. Just kept following, focusing on not falling and breaking my neck. 10 minutes later, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of running water. Bernardo quickened his pace, and we emerged in a small clearing where a thin but steady stream flowed down between moss-covered rocks. "Thank God!" I ran forward, almost falling to my knees on the bank. "Don't drink it!" His hand pulled me back hard. "What? Why?" "Untreated water. Parasites, bacteria, all kinds of things that'll make you sick or kill you." He was already looking around, collecting dry branches. "We need to boil it first. And how exactly are we going to boil water without a pot?" He pulled something from his pocket, the lighter he'd been trying to dry all night. "Hot rocks. Primitive method, but it works." I watched him work, starting a fire, choosing specific rocks, placing them in the fire until they were glowing, then submerging them in water he'd collected in a large leaf folded ingeniously. The water hissed, vaporized, and slowly began to boil. "How do you know how to do this?" I couldn't hide the surprise in my voice. Bernardo kept his eyes on the fire. "I've survived worse things than a deserted island, princess. Much worse." There was something in his tone, something dark, loaded with memories he didn't want to share. I decided not to push. I still hated him, but I needed him alive, and he clearly knew things I didn't. When the water finally cooled enough to drink, the first sip was the sweetest I'd ever tasted in my life. I'd never really valued water before. Now it seemed like the greatest luxury in the world. Thank you. The words came out before I could stop them. Bernardo looked at me, genuine surprise on his face. You just thanked me. Don't get used to it. But I couldn't hold back the small smile that tugged at the corner of my lips. The afternoon was dedicated to building a decent shelter. Bernardo started trying to do everything himself. Typical controlling alpha male, assembling an unstable structure of branches that would clearly collapse in the first strong breeze. That's not going to work, I commented, watching with crossed arms. You have a better idea? Actually, I do. I started collecting wide palm leaves and more flexible branches. Summer camp when I was 12. The counselor taught us how to make emergency shelters. You? At summer camp? He seemed genuinely shocked. The Mafia princess doing normal activities? My mother was still alive. She insisted. The mention of my mother tightened my chest, but I swallowed the emotion. Best decision she ever made. I learned to start fires, purify water, identify plants. Useful things when you don't have henchmen to do everything for you. I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Almost a smile. Almost. We worked together, and surprisingly, it worked. My structure was lower, more stable, with double coverage of palm leaves that would block wind and rain. When we finished, even Bernardo seemed impressed. Adequate, he said, inspecting our work. Adequate? I repeated, incredulous. It's architecturally superior to your pile of sticks. Don't let it go to your head. But he was almost smiling, and I hated admitting that it did something strange to my stomach. Something I definitely shouldn't be feeling for a man like Bernardo Provenzan. Night came fast, and with it, the cold. I didn't expect a tropical island to get so cold at night, but the ocean wind cut through my thin dress like ice knives. I curled up as much as I could, trying to conserve heat, but my teeth started chattering uncontrollably. Come here, Bernardo's voice cut through the darkness. No, Isla. He used my real name, not the annoying nickname. You're going to die of hypothermia to prove you hate me? I already know that. I don't need your— This isn't about needing. It's about surviving. And we both know you're shaking so badly you won't be able to sleep. I hated that he was right. Hated even more that my body was desperate for warmth. Any warmth. So I swallowed my pride and crawled closer to him. Bernardo opened his arms and hesitantly I nestled against his chest. The warmth was immediate and absurdly comforting. He was like a human furnace, radiating heat through the thin shirt. Better? His voice rumbled against my cheek. Don't talk, I mumbled. This is awkward enough as it is. I felt the low laugh vibrate in his chest, but he obeyed. We stayed silent, just the sound of waves in the distance and the jungle around us. And slowly, wrapped in that impossible warmth, I finally managed to sleep. The second day started with hunger. Real hunger. Not that I skipped breakfast. Hunger. My stomach churned, growled, seemed to be trying to devour itself. We need food. Bernardo was on the beach, looking at the ocean. I'm going to try fishing. I watched him try for 2 hours. He made an improvised spear, stood in the water up to his waist, diving repeatedly, and failing every single time. It was almost funny to see the powerful Bernardo Provenzan being defeated by fish. Meanwhile, I decided to explore the jungle's edge, looking for fruit. I found something that looked edible, small purple fruits hanging from a low tree. I was about to bite when a hand grabbed my wrist. Don't eat that! I almost fell from the fright. Bernardo had run from the beach, still dripping, eyes wild. They're just fruit. They're poisonous. He took the fruit from my hand and threw it away. See the leaves? Oval shape with red veins? Poison. Would kill you in hours. My blood froze. I'd been seconds away from biting that. How do you know? Training. He released my wrist, but his eyes were still worried. When you grow up like I did, you learn to identify poison. You never know when someone's going to try to kill you with food. The picture he painted was disturbing. A childhood where every meal could be your last, where trusting was suicide. Thank you, I said, and this time it was completely sincere, for saving me. He held my gaze. Always. The word hung between us, loaded with a weight neither of us was ready to examine. We spent the rest of the day exploring the island together. It was small, maybe 2 square kilometers, covered mostly with dense jungle and some white sand beaches. No signs of civilization, no boats, no planes in the sky, nothing but the two of us in wild nature. On the beach where the plane had crashed, we found scattered debris. Most had sunk, but some pieces floated near the shore. Bernardo dove repeatedly, searching for anything useful. On the 5th try, he emerged holding an emergency backpack. God is good all the time! He threw it on the sand, and we opened it together. Inside, a lighter sealed in plastic. Functional. A basic first aid kit, a thin metallic emergency blanket, and some energy bars half destroyed by water. Look, I murmured, grabbing a bar. It was soaked but edible. For the first time, Bernardo agreed, and we split the bars right there, eating slowly to make them last. It was on the way back that the most surreal moment so far happened. We found a fallen coconut tree, and Bernardo decided we needed those coconuts. Problem: he had no idea how to open a coconut. I watched him bang the coconut against rocks, try using the knife, almost losing a finger, and finally just stand there staring at the coconut like it was a personal enemy. You really don't know how to open a coconut. I couldn't hold back the laughter. Sorry, princess. I generally have people to do that. The laughter bubbled up and exploded. Real laughter. Deep. The kind that makes your stomach hurt. It was the first time I'd laughed since the accident, and somehow that made everything seem minimally less desperate. The great Bernardo Provenzon, defeated by a coconut. You can do better? Actually, yes. I took the coconut and the knife. I'd watched a YouTube tutorial 3 months ago when I was bored. I found the natural line in the middle of the coconut, inserted the knife carefully, twisted, and the coconut opened perfectly in 2 halves. The look on Bernardo's face was priceless. Apparently, gangsters don't learn useful skills. I offered him half, smiling victoriously. He took it, and for the first time since I'd known him, Bernardo Provenzon actually smiled. Not a crooked smile, not a half smile. A genuine smile that made wrinkles appear at the corners of his eyes and showed perfect teeth. It was disturbing how that smile completely changed his face, made him look human. That night, sitting by the fire, reality finally arrived. No one's coming, are they? I asked, hugging my knees. Bernardo was silent for too long. Then, the flight route was altered by the storm. No one knows where we are. Search will focus on the original route first, then expand. But that takes time. How much time? Weeks. Maybe months. Months. The word hit me like a punch. Months trapped here. Months with nothing. Months just with him. The tears came before I could stop them. Silent at first, then sobs that shook my shoulders. Everything I'd been holding since the accident crumbled at once. My father, the life I'd lost, the terror of dying here forgotten. Hey. Bernardo moved closer, uncomfortable but trying. Hey, Isla, look at me. I lifted my tear-soaked face. We're going to survive. His voice was firm, full of a certainty I didn't feel. I promise. We're getting out of here. Together. How can you be so sure? Because, he said, wiping a tear from my cheek with his thumb in a surprisingly gentle gesture. I didn't go through all the hell I went through in life to die on a paradise island. And neither did you. You're stronger than this. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't about not breaking. It's about rebuilding yourself every time you break. His eyes held mine. And you, Isla Russo, are the most stubbornly resilient person I've ever met. Something changed in that moment. Something small, but significant. He wasn't just my enemy. Not anymore. He was my survival partner. And maybe, just maybe, something more. The 3rd day, we established a routine. I took care of water, collected safe fruit, after Bernardo taught me to identify them, kept the fire going. He built improvements to the shelter, created traps to catch small animals, and finally, managed to fish something. It was small, but it was food. Real food. We worked together now. No fights, no constant hostility, just cooperation born from necessity and, surprisingly, starting to feel like choice. It was during the afternoon that I cut myself. Sharp coral hidden in the water when I was washing my face. The pain was instant and intense. Blood mixing with salt water in a combination that made my eyes tear up. Shit! I sat in the sand, holding my foot. Bernardo was at my side in seconds. Let me see. It's fine. I can... Isla, let me see. Reluctantly, I extended my foot. The cut was ugly, deep enough to need care. He grabbed the first aid kit and started cleaning with a gentleness that didn't match anything I knew about him. His hands were firm, but careful, cleaning the wound, applying antiseptic that burned like fire, then bandaging with almost professional precision. Why are you being nice? The words came out before I could filter them. He didn't look up from his work. Because you dying doesn't help me at all. It was a lie. I could see it in the tension of his shoulders, in the extra care he took. He was worried, genuinely worried. Done! He finished the bandaging. Stay out of the water today. Let it heal. Okay, Dr. Prevazen. This time it was him who almost smiled. It was late afternoon, when he was rebuilding part of the shelter, that I saw it. Bernardo had taken off his shirt, finally giving up on the destroyed piece of clothing. And his back. A huge scar ran from his left shoulder blade to his lower right back, thick, white with age, but unmistakably from violence. What happened? I asked before thinking better of it. He froze. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, without turning, betrayal, when I took over the empire. Who? My father's right hand. Thought he deserved the throne more than me. His voice was distant, lost in bad memories. Almost succeeded. Left me bleeding on the warehouse floor, thinking I was dead. But you weren't. No. He finally turned, and his eyes were hard. And he found that out in the worst possible way. I didn't need to ask what happened after. Men like Bernardo didn't leave betrayal unpunished. But for the first time, I saw beyond the monster. I saw the 23-year-old boy who lost his father, the young man who was betrayed by someone he trusted, the man who built an empire on foundations of blood not because he wanted to, but because he needed to survive. He wasn't just the monster. He was also the victim, a human being who suffered and became the thing that hurt him, so he'd never be hurt again. I'm sorry, I said softly, for what they did to you. Bernardo looked at me for a long moment, surprise and something more flashing in those dark eyes. Doesn't make me innocent? No, but it makes you human. That night, lying on opposite sides of the shelter, the distance seemed smaller, not physically, but in other ways that scared me because they meant I was starting to see Bernardo Prevazen as a person. And people were infinitely more dangerous than monsters, because people could make you feel. And feelings, in the situation we were in, were the last thing I needed to develop for the man who represented everything I ran away from. But as I fell asleep to the sound of him breathing a few meters away, a part of me whispered that maybe it was already too late. Maybe I was already starting to feel. Chapter 3, Learning to Trust.
Trust me. Just once.
1 week on the island, or maybe 2. I lost count of the days somewhere between finding water and learning to differentiate edible fruits from poisonous ones. Time had a strange quality here, stretching and compressing in ways that made my head ache when I thought too much about it. The routine formed naturally, without discussion. We woke with the sun, still wrapped in that thin emergency blanket we shared without embarrassment anymore. It was survival. It was necessary. And if my heart raced every time I woke with his arm around my waist, well, that was my problem to process later. He checked the traps he'd built while I collected fresh water from the stream. Breakfast was fruit, sometimes fish when Bernardo got lucky the night before. We talked little during these mornings, but the silence had changed. It was no longer tense, loaded with hostility. It was almost comfortable, companionship born from necessity that was slowly transforming into something more. It was on the 8th day, or maybe 9th, that the storm arrived. It started with wind that made the palm trees bend like drunken ballerinas. The sky darkened from blue to leaden gray in minutes, heavy clouds rolling over us like a suffocating blanket. This is going to be bad. Bernardo stood at the shelter entrance, looking at the sky with a worried expression. How bad? Very. He turned to me. We need to reinforce the shelter. Now. We worked frantically, adding more branches, more leaves, trying to create extra layers of protection. But when the rain started, it wasn't rain. It was a deluge. Water falling in solid sheets that hammered everything with brutal force. The wind howled like something alive, tearing pieces of our careful work and throwing them away. Get in! Bernardo pulled me into the shelter the moment the structure started shaking dangerously. We squeezed into the most protected corner, but it didn't help. Water came in from all sides, branches cracked, and suddenly the entire roof was ripped away by the wind, leaving us completely exposed to the elements. Shit! I tried to protect myself with my arms, but it was useless. Then Bernardo covered me. Completely. He positioned himself over me, back to the storm, body making a shield while nature tried to destroy us. I felt every muscle in him tense against me, arms on either side of my head, protecting, holding, and that's when I heard it, a crack too loud, too frightening. I looked over his shoulder in time to see a huge tree falling directly toward us. Bernardo! He rolled us at the last second. The tree hit the ground exactly where we'd been a second before, branches exploding in all directions, one passing so close to my face I felt the air move. We stayed there, tangled, breathing hard, while the storm continued around us. I was beneath him, completely protected by his body, and for the first time since I'd known him, I felt something besides fear or anger when I looked at Bernardo Provisan. I felt gratitude, and something else I refused to name. The storm eventually passed. Everything passes. And when silence finally came, we separated slowly, soaked to the bone, shaking from cold and adrenaline. My voice came out hoarse. You protected me. Bernardo wiped water from his face, not looking at me. Reflex? Or you care? He finally looked at me, really looked at me, and said nothing. The silence was answer enough. The shelter was completely destroyed. Everything we'd built, undone in minutes of nature's fury. It should have been devastating. But when we started rebuilding, side by side, there was something different in the air between us. We worked in sync now. I grabbed branches, he positioned them, he tied with vines, I reinforced with leaves. We didn't need to talk, just moved together as if we'd done this our whole lives. I watched his hands as he worked, hands I'd seen hold weapons, sign death orders, command an empire. But here they were creating shelter, weaving vines with almost artistic precision, building something instead of destroying. And he watched me too. I could feel his eyes on me when I didn't complain about the hard work, didn't ask for breaks, just kept going until the job was done. Respect. It was respect growing between us, slow but undeniable. That night, exhausted but with a new and improved shelter, we sat by the fire we'd miraculously managed to relight. The silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken things, unasked questions. I was 8 years old, I began suddenly, surprising myself, when I saw my father kill someone for the first time. Bernardo turned his head, full attention on me. It was in his office. I should have been sleeping, but I'd come down to get water. The memories came like they always came, in flashes of blood and muffled sounds. I heard screams, saw through the cracked door, a man kneeling, begging, my father, calm as always, putting the gun to his head, and then I didn't need to finish. Bernardo knew how the story ended. 10 years old, I continued, when I understood that friends only got close to me out of fear of what my father would do if they treated me badly. It wasn't me they wanted to know. It was the protection that came with me. I was 15 when I decided I was getting out, whatever it cost. I looked at him through the flames. It cost everything. My family, my identity, any sense of security. But it was that, or become like them. Like my father, I stopped before saying like you, but we both knew what I'd almost said. Bernardo was silent for a long time. Then, and did you get out? For 9 years, yes, until he found me. I laughed without humor. 9 years pretending to be normal. 9 years almost believing I'd escaped. You were brave. His voice was soft, full of something that sounded dangerously like admiration. It takes courage to let go of power. Most people cling to it even when it destroys them. It was the first time he'd acknowledged my choice as valid, as brave instead of weak. Something warmed in my chest, something that had nothing to do with the fire. Your turn, I said softly. Tell me something true, Bernardo. He looked at the fire for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice lower than I'd ever heard from him, my father was killed in front of me. I was 23. I waited, didn't rush, let him find the words in his own time. Business meeting, supposed ally, ambush. His hands closed into fists. 5 men. They killed my father first, so I'd watch. Then they came for me. But you survived. I had to kill all 5 the same day to survive, with my bare hands because they'd taken my gun. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were haunted. I built an empire on blood because it was that or die. There was no third option. Do you regret it? The question came out before I could stop it. The pause was long. So long the question echoed between us like its own entity. When he finally answered, the naked honesty in his voice hit me like a punch. Every day. I regret it every day. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of pure frustration. But I don't know how to be anything else, Isla. Violence is all I know. Power is all that keeps me alive. Without it, I don't know who I am. I wanted to say something comforting or wise, but I had nothing, because I understood. God help me. I completely understood what it was to be shaped by trauma, defined by survival, trapped in a version of yourself you didn't choose but don't know how to escape. On this island, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper, you seem different. He looked at me, surprise flashing in those dark eyes. You're not the boss here. You don't have to be the monster. You're just... I hesitated, searching for the right word. You. Just Bernardo. On this island, he repeated slowly, I'm just Bernardo. Not the boss, not the monster, just a man trying to survive. Pause. I like who I am here. I like who I become when I'm with you. My heart stumbled. It shouldn't have meant so much. Shouldn't have touched me so deeply. But it did. We looked at the sky together, millions of stars shining above like diamonds thrown on black velvet. Here, without light pollution, the universe revealed itself in all its impossible glory. It's beautiful, I murmured. It is. When I looked at him, Bernardo wasn't looking at the stars. He was looking at me. My stomach flipped. Suddenly I was very aware of how close we were, of how the fire illuminated his face in shadows and light, of how his eyes had dropped to my lips. Isla. My name and his voice sounded like prayer and sin at the same time. Don't. But I didn't move away. Don't what? He leaned closer, so slowly I could have stopped it at any moment. But I didn't. This can't happen. Even as I spoke, my body leaned toward him, betraying my words. Why? His voice was hoarse now, breath warm against my cheek. Because when we get out of here, I forced the words through my tight throat. You go back to being who you were. The boss, the empire, all of it. Our faces were inches apart now. I could see every detail of him. Lashes too long for a man. Small scar on his eyebrow. Lips approaching mine like an inevitable magnet. What if I don't want to go back? He whispered. You will. My voice broke. Power is addictive, Bernardo. And you'll go back. And I closed my eyes, gathering strength. I can't be the person who watches you turn into a monster again. I pulled away. Physically pulled away from him, putting space between our bodies that seconds ago had been dangerously close to touching. Bernardo didn't follow, just stayed there, jaw clenched, hands closed in fists, eyes burning with something between desire and pain. You're right, he said finally, voice rough. You're always right about me. But it didn't feel like I was right. It felt like I just made the biggest mistake of my life. That night, lying on the other side of the shelter, I could hear him breathing. Could feel the weight of his gaze even in the darkness. The tension was physical, so real it hurt. I almost kissed him, almost let it happen. And part of me, the part that was starting to see Bernardo as more than a monster, wished I had. But the rational part, the part that remembered who he was in the real world, knew I'd made the right choice, even if it didn't feel right, even if it hurt. Chapter 4. The Breaking Point.
I can't do this.
The third week brought changes neither of us expected. The traps that used to regularly catch small animals now sat empty. The fish, which Bernardo had finally learned to catch efficiently, simply disappeared from the coast. Even the fruit was becoming scarce, the trees showing signs of some seasonal change we didn't understand. Nothing new. Bernardo returned from the traps empty-handed for the fourth morning in a row. Frustration was clear in the tense line of his shoulders. I looked at the 3 small fruits we'd saved. Our entire reserve? We need to ration, I said, hating how weak my voice sounded. The constant hunger was starting to affect everything. My mood, my energy, my ability to think clearly. I know. He sat heavily in the sand. Half each. Makes it last 2 more days. And then? He didn't answer. There was no good answer. Hunger does strange things to people. Makes them irritable, explosive, irrational. Small things we used to ignore became huge. The way he chewed, how I sighed, everything became a source of tension. You're eating too fast, I snapped on the 3rd day of rationing. Excuse me? Bernardo stopped, fruit halfway to his mouth. Nothing. I turned my face away. It was ridiculous, but hunger made everything magnified. No, say it. Clearly, something's bothering you. Forget it, Bernardo. I said forget it! The silence that followed was icy. He finished eating without another word, and I hated myself for starting a fight over absolutely nothing. It was on the 4th day of scarce food that I noticed. Bernardo was slower than normal, sweating more than he should even in the heat. When I asked if he was okay, he just mumbled something about being tired. But when I woke in the middle of the night and accidentally touched him, he was burning. Fever. High fever. Bernardo. I shook him gently. Bernardo, wake up. He opened his eyes, but his gaze was glazed, unfocused. Isla, you have a fever. Where does it hurt? I'm fine. But even speaking, he was shaking. I built up the fire, brought water, started examining him looking for the source. That's when I saw it, the cut on his thigh, which he'd mentioned vaguely days ago as no big deal. It was red, swollen, with yellowish pus at the edges. Infection. Serious infection. Shit. My heart raced. Without antibiotics, without a hospital, an infection could kill, and kill fast. "It's cold," he mumbled, teeth chattering. "Why is it so cold?" I covered him with everything we had, but he kept shaking. The fever was rising, and with it, delirium began. "Father, no, I can fix it," he murmured, lost in some memory. "Don't leave me. Not again. Shh, I'm here." I held his hand, trying to anchor him in reality. "Bernardo, it's me. Isla, you're safe." But he couldn't hear me. He was lost somewhere between past and present, fever burning through barriers he normally kept so carefully erected. "Isla," my name in his delirious voice. "I can't lose her. Not her, too." My heart stopped. Two? Who else had he lost? "You won't lose me," I whispered, wiping the sweat from his forehead with a wet cloth. "I promise. You won't lose me." I spent that night and the following day by his side, changing cold compresses, making him drink water, cleaning the wound with boiled water. But the fever wouldn't break. It kept rising, and with it, the delirium worsened. He needed medicine, antibiotics that didn't exist on this island, unless summer camp. 12 years old? The counselor teaching about medicinal plants. Some had natural antibacterial properties. If I could remember which, if I could find it. I left Bernardo for brief moments, running into the jungle with desperation guiding every step. I searched frantically, remembering vague descriptions, hoping to recognize something. There, wide leaves with a distinctive shape, reddish bark. It had to be the right tree. I ran back, hands full of leaves and bark. I boiled everything until it became thick, bitter tea. I forced Bernardo to drink spoonful by spoonful, praying I was right, that I wasn't poisoning him instead of saving him. Come back to me," I begged, holding his feverish face between my hands. "Bernardo, please, you're too strong for this. Too strong for a damn infection to defeat you." Second night, he got worse before he got better. The fever spiked so high I started to become certain I was going to lose him. I cried. For the first time since my father's funeral on the island, I cried for real, because the idea of Bernardo dying, of being here alone without him, was unbearable in a way I didn't want to examine. "Don't leave me," I whispered against his hair. "Please don't leave me alone here." It was in the early morning of the third night that the fever finally broke. He stopped shaking, his breathing calmed, and when I touched his forehead, it was cooler. Still warm, but not that frightening heat from before. Relief hit me so hard I collapsed right there beside him, exhaustion from 3 days without sleep finally bringing me down. I fell asleep with my hand still holding his. When Bernardo woke, the first thing he saw was Isla sleeping awkwardly beside him, fingers intertwined with his, face marked by dried tears, messy hair, deep circles under her eyes, completely exhausted. And something in him changed, something deep and permanent, because looking at her, at the woman who'd spent 3 days without sleep to save him, who'd cried for him, who'd cared when she shouldn't, he recognized what that feeling in his chest was, but he couldn't name it. Not yet. Maybe never. When I woke, he was watching me, really awake this time, eyes clear and focused. "You," my voice came out hoarse from sleep and relief. "You came back." I came back. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Thanks to you. You scared me." The words came out in a rush. "Scared me a lot. I thought you were going to, that you were..." "Shh." He squeezed my hand. "I'm here. You saved me." Tears came again, but this time from relief. "You would have done the same." I would have, without hesitation. I would have done anything. The following days were strange. Bernardo was weak, needing help to stand, unable to do the tasks he normally took on, and I took on everything. Water, food, fire, shelter. Everything. "I should be helping," he said with frustration on the 4th day, watching me return with water. "I shouldn't be sitting here useless." "You're not useless." I sat beside him. "You're recovering. You're doing everything alone. You helped me when I needed it." I looked at him directly. "When I cut my foot, when the storm came, every time I needed you. Now it's my turn." He held my gaze. "We're partners now. For real." We always were. I realized the truth as I spoke. Since day one, we just took a while to admit it. Bernardo extended his hand, and without thinking, I took it, fingers intertwined, sitting in silence. Something changed between us again, barriers falling, walls crumbling. When he finally recovered enough strength to walk to the beach, we went together at sunset. The ocean was calm, gentle waves lapping at the sand, sky painted in impossible oranges and pinks. We walked in silence, side by side, so close our arms touched with every step. The air between us was loaded with unspoken things, unasked questions, feelings growing like an impossible tide to contain. We stopped where water met sand, looking at the infinite horizon, and it was Bernardo who broke the silence. If we get out of here, when we get out, I corrected automatically, but my voice carried no conviction. He looked at me, something vulnerable passing through those dark eyes. When we get out, what happens to us? The question hit me like a cold wave, because it was the question I'd avoided thinking about, the reality I'd pushed away every time it threatened to surface. I swallowed hard, forcing the words through the pain in my chest. There is no us, Bernardo. My voice came out sadder than I intended. There's you in your world, me in mine. What if I don't want to go back to my world? I turned to him completely then, seeing the dangerous hope in his eyes. Hope I needed to kill before it grew, before it destroyed us. You say that now? I forced firmness into my voice. Here, where there's no power, no empire, nothing but survival. But out there, power is addictive, Bernardo. It's like a drug, and you'll go back. I waited for him to argue. Swear it would be different, promise he'd choose another path, but he said nothing. Just stood there, looking at me with that broken expression, jaw clenched, because he knew. He was afraid I was right. And his silence hurt more than any argument could have hurt, because it confirmed everything. He couldn't promise, couldn't guarantee, because he didn't know either if he could choose differently. Isla, my name came out like a plea. Don't. I shook my head, stepping back. Don't do this. Don't do this to me. Do what? Make me believe. Make me hope for something we both know won't happen. He took a step forward, closing the distance I'd created. What if I try? What if I really try to be different? You'll fail. The words came out brutally honest. Not because you're weak, but because it's who you are. It's who you had to become to survive. And you don't undo a lifetime of choices just because you spent a few weeks on an island. You don't know that? I do. I held his gaze. Because I know you, Bernardo. I know you in a way that scares me. And I know that out there, when power calls you back, when the empire needs you, when you feel that adrenaline of control, you'll go back. Not because you love me less, but because it defines you more. He opened his mouth to argue, but closed it without saying anything, because he had no argument, no guarantee. He only had the fear that every word that came out of my mouth was absolute truth. We stood there, looking at each other as the sun died behind us, painting everything in tones of farewell. Two hearts recognizing what they felt, but refusing to name, because naming would make it real, and real meant it could be destroyed. I wish, he began, voice hoarse. I know, I interrupted softly. Me too. And that was all we could say, all we could admit, because confessing more would be crossing a line we couldn't come back from, would be opening a door we couldn't close. So we stayed silent, feeling everything but saying nothing, loving but denying, knowing the real world was already winning even before we returned to it. Chapter 5, When Walls Come Down.
Don't get closer!
The fourth week brought silent acceptance. We stopped pretending we didn't feel it. We didn't do anything about it, but we accepted it. And somehow, that changed everything. I woke to sun filtering through the shelter's leaves, warm against my eyelids. But what really woke me was the sensation of being completely enveloped, heavy arm around my waist, regular breathing against my neck, fingers intertwined with mine even in sleep. Bernardo. I should have pulled away, should have created distance, but I didn't, just stayed there, head tucked perfectly against his chest, listening to the constant rhythm of his heart beating against my ear. It was comforting in a way that scared me, like I belonged there, like I'd always belonged. I felt when he woke, the subtle change in breathing, the slight tightening of his fingers on mine, but neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke about it. We just stayed there, embraced in the golden morning light, accepting what we were to each other, even without naming it. He was the one who finally broke the silence, voice rough with sleep. Good morning, I whispered back, and we continued lying there for a few more minutes, neither wanting to be the first to destroy the moment, because outside that shelter we needed to survive, needed to maintain walls. But here, in those first minutes of the day, we could just be. The days gained new texture, small moments of intimacy that weren't planned but happened naturally, like breathing. Hold still, I said one afternoon, pulling Bernardo to sit in front of me. Why? Your hair is impossible. And it was. Weeks without cutting had left the dark strands long enough to fall in his eyes, tangled from salt and wind. "Let me fix it." He hesitated but sat, and I started working, fingers combing through the strands, separating knots carefully. It was intimate in a strange way, touching him like this, feeling the texture of his hair, the temperature of the skin at his nape. "You're surprisingly gentle," he commented, eyes closed. "Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation." I felt more than saw his smile. I kept working, eventually braiding the hair simply just to get it off his face. When I finished, he turned and took my hand, pressing a quick kiss to my knuckles. "Thank you." The gesture was so unexpected, so gentle, that my heart stumbled. I pulled my hand back quickly, ignoring how my skin tingled where he'd touched. "You're welcome," I mumbled, fleeing to get water before he saw the blush on my cheeks. That night, it was my turn. I'd spent the day collecting fruit, reaching high branches, carrying weight my shoulders weren't used to carrying. The pain was deep, muscles screaming protest. "Come here." Bernardo pulled me to sit in front of him, back turned. "I'm fine." "Liar." His hands landed on my shoulders, and I started to protest, but then he began massaging, and the words died in my throat. His fingers worked the knots with almost professional precision, finding each point of tension and applying exact pressure. It was too good, and I couldn't hold back the low moan of relief. "Better?" His voice was rougher than normal, breathing a little heavier. "Much," I admitted, letting my head fall forward, completely relaxed under his touch. He continued for long minutes, hands firm but gentle, working every inch of my shoulders and upper back. It was torture and paradise at the same time, because each touch reminded me of what we couldn't have, of what we were denying. When he finally stopped, I stayed there for an extra moment, feeling the loss of his touch. Then I forced myself to pull away, murmur thanks, and pretend my entire body wasn't vibrating with awareness of him. Food continued to be scarce, but we developed a silent ritual. When we caught something, we always split it in half. And always, each insisted the other eat more. "You need it." I'd push the larger portion toward him. "You worked harder today." He'd push it back. Eventually we'd compromise, dividing perfectly equal, but the ritual itself became important, taking care of each other, putting the other first. It was a love language neither of us was ready to speak out loud, and there were touches. So many small touches that could have been accidental, but weren't. Hands meeting when we passed objects to each other, fingers tangling for an extra second, bumps when walking side by side that were too purposeful to be accidents, his shoulder against mine when we sat by the fire, my hand in his when he helped me climb slippery rocks. Each touch left a mark, left desire, left frustration that grew like an impossible tide to ignore. It was on the 10th day of the 4th week that the moment happened that almost broke everything. "You need to know how to defend yourself," Bernardo said suddenly, pulling me to the flat part of the beach. "I know how to defend myself. Against normal humans, maybe, but if someone dangerous comes..." He didn't finish. Didn't need to. "Show me." "Show you what?" "Try to take me down." I looked at him incredulously. Bernardo was bigger, stronger, trained in real combat. I was an elementary school teacher who took some self-defense classes 5 years ago. "This is ridiculous." "Try." I sighed, but attacked. Basic move I'd learned in class. He blocked easily, of course, and started showing me how to improve positioning, where to apply force. "No, like this." He corrected my posture, hands on my hips, adjusting. "Lower center of gravity. Use my weight against me." I tried again, and on the 5th attempt, when he grabbed me from behind to demonstrate how to escape, something clicked. I used the movement he'd taught, spun, pushed, and suddenly he was off balance. We both fell in the sand, him underneath, me falling on top of him, and we started laughing. Real laughter, deep, the kind that makes your stomach hurt, because it was absurd, because I'd actually managed to take down Bernardo Provenzon, because we were covered in sand and looked ridiculous. You let me win!" I accused between laughs. "I didn't." He was laughing too, that rich sound that made something in my chest vibrate. "You actually caught me by surprise." We kept laughing, and then the laughter started dying, and I realized the position we were in, him underneath, me practically lying on top of him, faces inches apart, breaths mingling, his eyes locked on mine. The tension exploded between us like a bomb. I could see the exact moment his gaze dropped to my lips, saw when his pupils dilated, felt when his breathing got heavier. My own breath caught. Time stopped. There was only us, sand and magnetic attraction so strong it hurt to resist. He raised his hands slowly, fingers brushing my cheek, with a gentleness that contrasted absurdly with everything else about him. I should have pulled away, should have broken the moment, but I was frozen, entire body vibrating with the desire to close that tiny distance. Then a bird screamed, loud, shrill, cutting through the moment like a knife. We both jumped, separating immediately. I stood too fast, stumbling in the sand. He stayed sitting, hands still suspended in the air where my face had been, expression frustrated and confused at the same time. I need water, I stammered, fleeing before I did something stupid, like going back and finishing what we'd almost started. But that night, when we were lying under the stars, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I hated you for so long. The words came out soft, almost lost in the sound of waves. I know, Bernardo responded equally quiet. But here, I see who you could be. I turned my head to look at him. Who you really are under everything else. Isla, you're kind when no one's watching, I continued, needing to say it. Funny when you let your guard down. Protective without being controlling. You care, even pretending you don't. You feel, even trying not to. That's not the real me. It is! I sat up, turning completely to him. It's you without the armor, without the walls, without the monster mask you had to wear for so long you forgot it was just a mask. He was silent, eyes shining in the firelight. Then, so low I almost didn't hear. No one's ever seen that before. No one ever wanted to see. I see. I held his gaze. And it's the most real person you've ever been. Days later, fishing together in the shallow water, it was him who broke the silence. You make me want things I can't have. I turned to him, water up to my knees, heart racing. Like what? Peace. He didn't look at me, keeping his eyes on the ocean. Normalcy. Waking up without planning who I need to watch, without calculating moves 3 steps ahead, without... He stopped, jaw clenched. Without what? He finally looked at me, and the raw vulnerability in his eyes cut through me. You make me want you. And it terrifies me because I know I can't. I know when we get out of here, I'll ruin everything. I'll disappoint you. I'll go back to being the monster and you'll hate me again. And it'll be worse than before. Because now, his voice broke. Because now I know what I'm losing. I had no words. So I just took his hand, intertwining fingers, standing there with him while waves lapped at our ankles. It was at sunset 2 days later that everything almost changed. We were on the beach, watching the sun die in an explosion of impossible colors. Bernardo turned to me, and there was something different in his eyes, determination mixed with desperation. Give me a reason, he said, voice low and intense, not to kiss you right now. My heart stopped. I searched for reasons, should have had thousands. But looking at him, at the man who'd become my world on this island, I couldn't find any. I don't have any, I whispered. He moved then, hands rising to the sides of my face, holding with a gentleness that contradicted the intensity in his gaze. He pulled me closer, so slowly, giving me time to stop. But I didn't. Our faces approached, inch by inch, breaths mingling, lips millimeters apart. I could feel his warmth, smell of salt and sun, could see every detail of those dark eyes fixed on mine. Isla, my name like a plea and promise. And then I saw it, something on the horizon, something that shouldn't be there. Bernardo! My voice came out strangled. Look! He turned, still holding me, and froze. Smoke. Thin line of smoke on the horizon. Ship. We both ran to the fire, threw everything we had on it, green leaves that would create thick smoke. Screamed, waved, desperate, frantic, doing everything we could to be seen. But the ship continued, passed on the horizon without changing course, without reducing speed, without seeing us, and disappeared. We stood there, watching our last hope vanish, double devastation crushing us. We lost the ship, lost possible rescue, and we lost the moment that wouldn't come back. Bernardo pulled me against him, and we collapsed together in the sand, without words, just holding each other while the sun finished dying and darkness arrived, knowing that almost kiss, like everything else between us, would remain suspended in almost impossibility, in the torture of never knowing. Chapter 6. The night everything changes.
Say it. Right now.
The day started bad and got progressively worse. The storm from the night before, smaller than that first one but still violent, had destroyed half our stored water supply. And as if the universe was determined to test us, the traps remained empty. We need protein. Bernardo was looking at the steep cliff on the island's north edge. I saw bird nests up there, eggs. I followed his gaze. The cliff was high, 30 meters maybe, with loose rocks and irregular surface. It was suicidal. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. This is insane. You're going to fall and break your neck. He turned to me, jaw tense. You have a better idea? Because I'm open to suggestions. Anything that doesn't involve you killing yourself. I'm not going to kill myself. I'm going to get food. Bernardo, Isla, we don't have a choice. His voice rose for the first time in weeks. Look at you. You've lost weight you didn't have to lose. You can barely stand for more than 2 hours straight. I'm not going to watch you waste away because I'm too scared to climb a damn cliff. And I'm not going to watch you fall to your death because you're too proud to admit it's dangerous. Proud? This isn't about pride. Then what's it about? Why do you always think you need to do everything alone? Because it's what I know how to do, he shouted, and something in his voice broke. It's all I know how to do, Isla. Solve problems, protect, make the impossible happen, and if I can't do that here, if I can't keep you alive, then what am I? The silence that followed was deafening, both breathing hard, emotions at boiling point, everything we'd been holding for weeks finally exploding. And you, he continued, turning all his frustration on me. You always think you know the better way to do everything, always questioning, always arguing. Because someone needs to question you, because you make impulsive decisions and expect everyone to follow blindly. Impulsive? I calculate every move. Except when it involves your own safety. Then you act like you're indestructible. And you act like you're smarter than everyone. Because I usually am, especially when you're being a stubborn idiot. Idiot? Yes! Idiot! Stubborn, controlling. I'm tired! I screamed so loud my throat hurt. Tired of pretending! Tired of fighting against everything! Tired of... Of what, Isla? Say it. Of feeling this. The words exploded from me. I feel you! I feel you all the time, every day, in every breath, and I hate it because I know I can't have it. Because when we get out of here, everything goes back to being impossible, and I can't keep pretending it's not destroying me. Bernardo froze, completely froze, eyes wide, breath caught. What? His voice came out low, dangerous. You feel what? Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You know what? He crossed the distance between us in 3 long strides, grabbing me by the shoulders. Say it. I need to hear you say it. Bernardo, say it! You! I screamed in his face. I feel you, all of you, and I hate it and love it, and I don't know how to separate the two anymore. Something changed in his eyes. Something intense and wild and completely out of control. And then the words started pouring from him like a broken dam. You want to know the truth? I love you. His voice was hoarse, desperate. I love you, Isla. I've loved you since day 5 when you laughed at me with that damn coconut, when you were smart and funny and real in a way no one's ever been with me. My heart stopped. I love you when you wake up messy and grumpy. I love you when you're stubborn and impossible. I love you when you challenge me, when you push me, when you refuse to be afraid of me. Bernardo, I could barely breathe. I love you when you're strong and when you let yourself be vulnerable. I love you when you laugh and when you cry and when you just exist near me. He pulled me closer, hands trembling on my shoulders. And yes, it terrifies me, scares me to death, because you're right about everything, about me going back to what I know, about power being addictive, about me probably disappointing you. Tears finally fell, rolling hot down my cheeks. But on this island, his voice broke. On this island, you're mine and I'm yours. And I don't care if it's an illusion, if it's temporary, if it's impossible out there. Here, now, in this moment, I love you with everything I am. I couldn't take it anymore. I threw myself against him, pulling his face down, and kissed him. The kiss was desperate, years of tension exploding at once. He pulled me against his body with a force that should have hurt but didn't, just made me feel alive. His hands everywhere, in my hair, on my back, on my waist, as if he wanted to memorize every inch. My own hands grabbed his shirt, pulling, needing him closer. Impossible to get closer, but still wanting. He tried to pull away, tried to slow down. Isla, wait, we need to think. No, I pulled him back. Don't think. Don't stop. I can't take almost anymore. I want you. I need you. Now. Are you sure? He held my face, searching my eyes. Because if we start this, I don't know if I'll be able to stop. Don't know if I'll be able to let you go after. I've never been more sure of anything. And that was all he needed to hear. What happened in the following minutes was the best thing in my life. The The moon was high when we finally collapsed, tangled in each other under the thin blanket, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my back, breath still irregular, heart still racing. I don't regret it, I said softly, breaking the silence. I needed him to know what just happened. I don't regret it one bit. I felt more than saw his smile. Me neither. He kissed my forehead, gentle now where he'd been intense before. I'll never regret it. This night. You. I stayed there, listening to his heart beat under my ear, feeling his hand in my hair, and for the first time since the accident, I felt complete, like all the broken pieces of me had finally fit together. Bernardo? You called this island here. I looked up to see his face. You said, here I'm yours. Like out there is different. He tensed. No. I put a finger on his lips. Not now. Tonight is ours. Tomorrow we can worry about the real world. But tonight is just ours. He relaxed, pulling me closer. Ours. He agreed. Just ours. I fell asleep, wrapped in him, safe and loved in a way I'd never felt before. And if part of me knew I was living a borrowed fantasy, that morning would bring reality back, I pushed it away. Tonight was ours, and it would be enough. It had to be. I woke different. Everything was different. The way my body molded to his, the way he held me even while sleeping. The intimacy of it was new, scary, and completely perfect. I felt him wake, the change in breathing. His hands moved, pulling me closer in a way that was both possessive and gentle. Good morning, Miyakara. His voice was rough with sleep, but loaded with affection. Miyakara? I repeated, smiling against his chest. My dear. In Italian. He kissed the top of my head. It's fitting. You're being cute. It's disturbing. I felt the laugh vibrate through him. I'll try to be more monstrous tomorrow. Don't. I looked up, meeting those dark eyes that now looked at me completely differently, with open love, no hiding. I like you like this. Human. Real. Mine. I've always been yours. He pulled my face up, kissing me slowly, completely different from the kisses of the night before. This was soft, promise instead of desperation. Since the coconut, maybe before, maybe always. I was about to respond when I heard it. A sound, distant but unmistakable. A sound that shouldn't exist on this island. Sound of a helicopter. We both froze, looked at each other, terror and hope mixed in equal parts. That's... My voice trembled. Rescue! He finished, but it didn't sound like victory. It sounded like an ending. The sound got louder, closer, too real to ignore. We got up quickly, putting on clothes, running out of the shelter. And there it was. Helicopter with rescue markings, circling the island. They'd found us. I should have been relieved, should have been grateful. But all I felt was pure panic looking at Bernardo. I'm not ready, he said, voice breaking. I'm not ready to lose you. Me neither. But the helicopter was descending. And ready or not, the island was ending. And with it, who knows what else? Chapter 7. Return to reality.
Don't let them take me!
The helicopter landed in a whirlwind of sand and wind that made us close our eyes. When I opened them again, there were people in uniforms running toward us. Paramedics, rescue team, reality descending on us like an avalanche. Survivors located? Someone shouted into the radio. 2, both conscious. Need immediate medical evaluation. Hands pulled me, guided me. Someone threw a thermal blanket over my shoulders. Questions came from all sides. Your name? Are you hurt? Can you walk? How long have you been here? 5 weeks. Bernardo's voice answered, and when I looked at him, they were doing the same to him, separating us, putting him in the opposite direction. We've been here for 5 weeks. 5? I was sure it was 3, maybe 4, but 5 entire weeks had passed. More than a month. Enough time for the world to declare us dead. Enough time for everything to change. I tried to reach Bernardo, but they were already gently pushing me toward the helicopter. I looked back desperately and found his eyes through the chaos. He was frozen. Team trying to make him sit, but he just looked at me. That last look carried everything. All the love we felt. All the fear of what was coming. Silent promise neither of us was sure we could keep. Then the helicopter door closed, and he disappeared from view. The hospital was white and sterile chaos. They took me straight to the examination room, drew blood, did x-rays, asked about injuries, about symptoms, about everything except what really mattered. Where's Bernardo? I asked for the 3rd time. Mr. Provazan is being treated in a separate wing. The nurse responded without looking at me. Focus on yourself now. But I couldn't focus. Couldn't think about anything but him, where he was, if he was okay, if he was also asking about me. That's when I heard the scream. Isla! The door exploded, and Nina came running in, security trying to stop her, but she completely ignored them. My best friend, my Nina, with messy blonde hair and eyes red from crying. Nina! I barely had time to process before she crushed me in a hug. You're alive, she sobbed against my shoulder. God, you're alive. I'm fine. I tried to comfort her, but was confused. Nina, they declared you dead, Isla. She pulled back, holding my face, tears falling nonstop. Your funeral was last week. I gave a speech at your funeral. The world spun. Whoa, what? 5 weeks. You disappeared for 5 weeks. They found wreckage, found bodies. Her voice broke. They thought you'd died. Everyone thought so. My funeral. They'd had my funeral. While I was alive, in love, living on the island, the world had buried me. My father? I asked, already knowing the answer, but needing to hear it. Nina's face crumbled. Isla, I'm so sorry. They recovered his body 3 days after the accident. He didn't survive the impact. I should cry, should feel devastation. But all I felt was a strange emptiness. Grief mixed with relief, mixed with guilt for feeling relief. My father was dead. The man who gave me life and made that life impossible at the same time. And I was free. Officially, permanently free. But why did this freedom feel so suffocating? 3 days. 3 days trapped in the hospital being examined, questioned, evaluated. 3 days without seeing Bernardo, without hearing from him, without knowing if he was thinking about me like I was desperately thinking about him, until the flowers arrived. No card, no name, just white roses too beautiful to be coincidence. And I knew who had sent them, knew he was thinking about me, that he was as desperate as I was. I held the flowers and cried for the first time since we'd returned, because flowers were all we had now. Silent gestures across the distance the real world had forced between us. The media exploded. Of course it exploded. Miracle at Sea, Russo Jerez and Boss Provazan survive the impossible. Romance on the island. Photos show survivors in intimate embrace during rescue. Love amid tragedy. What really happened on that island? Nina tried to hide the tabloids from me, but it was useless. They were everywhere. Blurred photos of us being rescued, my head against his chest, embraced, even surrounded by rescue team. Absurd speculation about romance, conspiracy, everything. The pressure was suffocating. Reporters outside the hospital, constant calls, interview requests, the world wanting a piece of us, of our story, of our tragedy transformed into entertainment. And through it all, not a word from him. It was on the 7th day that he showed up. I was at the apartment Nina had insisted I stay at. My old apartment had been emptied after they declared me dead. So I was living in her space, wearing her clothes, existing in a strange limbo between who I was and who I'd become. The doorbell rang. Nina answered, and I heard the voice. I need to see her. Please. Bernardo. I ran to the living room, and there he was. Impeccable suit, haircut, scar on his forehead, almost healed. He looked like the Bernardo Provazan I'd met on the plane. Powerful, controlled, dangerous. But his eyes were still the Bernardo from the island. The man who loved me, who held me, who promised things he didn't know if he could keep. Hi, my voice trembled. Hi. And then I was running. We were both running, crossing the distance, crashing together with a force that should have hurt but didn't. He caught me, lifted me off the ground, and kissed me like he needed it to breathe. I thought I dreamed you, I cried against his lips. I thought that I'd made it all up. Me too. He held my face, kissing every inch, forehead, cheeks, nose, lips. Me too. But you're real. You're here. You're real. Nina gave us privacy, disappearing to her room, and we collapsed on the couch, unable to stop touching, confirming the other was solid, real, present. But eventually, inevitably, we needed to talk. My world, Bernardo began, still holding my hands as if I'd disappear if he let go. Is it war, Isla? Giovanni dying created a power vacuum. Rivals who were afraid of him are now attacking. They want a piece of his territory, want to destroy any alliance he had. I know. I'd expected this. The Mafia world didn't stop because one person died. They want you, his voice hardened, want to use you as a hostage, as leverage against me, because the whole world saw those photos. Everyone knows that then protect me, I said simply. You're the most powerful man I know. Protect me. I want to. The anguish in his voice was palpable. More than anything. But protecting you means Means trapping you in the world you spent 9 years running from. Means security guards 24 hours. Means living behind fortified walls. Means keeping me in a cage, I finished, stomach sinking, exactly like my father did. He didn't deny it, couldn't. I knew! The words came out bitter. I knew that when we got back, you'd be him again. The boss. Not Bernardo, not the man from the island. It's not. It is. I stood, needing distance. On the island, you were Bernardo, just a man trying to survive. But here, you're the boss. And the boss can't have normal things, can't have love without turning it into a prison. Isla, it's not that simple. I know it's not simple. I turned to him, tears burning. I know your world is complicated, dangerous, impossible, but you can choose. You can choose to get out, choose differently, choose. I can't. He was standing now too, frustration exploding. I can't just abandon an empire. People depend on me, families, legitimate businesses, hundreds of people whose lives collapse if I just disappear. What about me? My voice broke. I depend on you. I need you. I love you. Doesn't that count? The pain that crossed his face was physical. You deserve better than this life. Don't tell me what I deserve, I screamed. You're leaving me. Again, just like my father, just like everyone. You're choosing power over me. I'm freeing you. He took a step forward, but I stopped him with a raised hand. You said you couldn't live in this world, that it destroyed you. How can I love you and drag you back into this? I don't want freedom. I pounded his chest, weak, desperate. I want you. I want the man who protected me in the storm, who learned to open coconuts, who laughed with me in the sand. I want Bernardo, not the boss. I don't know how to separate them anymore. His voice broke. I don't know how to be one without the other. Then learn, I begged. Learn with me. We can figure it out together, but you need to try, need to choose to try. Silence. Long, painful, suffocating silence. And in that silence, I saw the answer before he spoke. I can't, he whispered. I can't abandon everything, the people, the responsibilities, everything I've built. And I can't ask you to live in this prison. So what? Even knowing, even already feeling my heart breaking. So I let you go, because I love you too much to destroy you. The laugh that came from me was broken, humorless. You love me too much, so you leave me? Do you hear how insane that sounds? Isla, get out. I turned my back, unable to look at him anymore. Get out now. Isla, please. I said get out, I screamed, voice tearing. You made your choice. Power over me, empire over us. So get out and go back to your world and let me try to pick up the pieces of mine. I heard him move, hesitant steps toward the door. Long pause where I almost turned, almost begged him to stay. But then the door opened, closed, and he was gone. I collapsed on the floor, sobs tearing through me. Nina appeared immediately, catching me, holding me while I fell apart. He left, I cried on her shoulder. He chose me on the island, but can't choose me here. And I don't know how to survive this, because surviving the island was easy. We had each other. But how do you survive the real world alone after knowing love like that? I didn't know, had no idea. And that ignorance hurt more than anything the island had thrown at me. Chapter 8, The Weeks Apart.
I miss you.
2 weeks, 336 hours. Every minute dragging like eternity since Bernardo walked out of that apartment and took a piece of me with him. I went back to work on Monday. The school had saved my position, citing extraordinary circumstances. The kids welcomed me back with welcome back signs and hugs that almost made me cry. They were so happy I was alive, so innocently happy. If only I could feel the same. Miss Russo, Tommy, 7 years old, pulled my sleeve. Were you really on an island, like a castaway? I was. Yes. I forced a smile I didn't feel. Was it cool? Cool. As if it were a vacation. As if it hadn't been terrible and wonderful and transformative all at the same time. As if I hadn't fallen in love and lost everything in the space of weeks. It was an adventure, I answered diplomatically. But it wasn't an adventure. It was life. Real life. Raw, true. And now I was back to fake normalcy, pretending nothing had changed when everything, absolutely everything had changed. I taught reading, graded homework, mediated playground fights, did all the things I used to do. but it was like watching someone else do it through glass. I was there, but I wasn't really present. "You're dead inside," Nina said on the 5th night, finding me staring out the window at nothing. I'm processing. "You're suffering." She sat beside me. "Call him." "No, Isla, he made his choice, Nina." My voice came out harder than I intended. "He chose Empire over me, over us, so he doesn't deserve a call. And you deserve to be miserable for the rest of your life?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know the answer. What I didn't know was what was happening on the other side of the city. Bernardo was working 20 hours a day, meetings, negotiations, strategic planning. Vincent, his right hand, watched with growing concern as the boss, who'd always been controlled, started unraveling at the edges. "Boss, you need to rest," Vincent said for the 100th time. "I'm fine. You don't sleep, don't eat. You stare at her picture on your phone like it'll disappear if you blink." I said I'm fine. Bernardo slammed his hand on the table, voice rising. Then he took a deep breath, controlling himself. "Sorry, I'm fine." The lie was obvious. Anyone with eyes could see. But there was a reason for the instability. The rivals had noticed. Bernardo Provenzon, always unshakable, was weak, emotionally compromised. And weakness in their world was an invitation to attack. They started small, warehouse fire, shipment intercepted, threatening messages, but then it escalated. 2 of Bernardo's men were found dead. Professional execution, clear message. The war had begun. "We need to talk." Nina entered my room on the 2nd Tuesday. "There are men following you." I sat up from the bed where I'd been lying staring at the ceiling. "What? Men?" "At least 3 that I've identified. They follow you from school to the grocery store, everywhere." My blood froze. "Are you sure?" "Positive." "Isla, I'm worried. We should call the police." No, something told me police wouldn't help here. This was a different world, different rules. The next day I tested it, left early, walked a different route, and there they were, black SUV, 3 men in suits, following at a respectful but unmistakable distance. I stopped abruptly, turned, marched straight to the car. The window rolled down. Big man, scar on his cheek, looked at me impassively. "Who sent you?" I demanded. "Miss Russo?" "H.O. sent you?" Pause. Then, "Mr. Provenzon, for your protection." Rage exploded in my chest. "He has no right. Tell him I don't need his protection, don't want anything from him. He can get you out of here now." "With all due respect, miss, I can't do that. I didn't ask for your opinion. Boss was clear. You stay protected, with or without your knowledge, with or without your consent." I wanted to scream, wanted to punch the car, but something deep down, something I hated to admit, was touched. He still cared. Still was protecting me even after everything, but that didn't change anything. Protection wasn't love. Control wasn't care. "Fine," I forced through my teeth, "but stay away. I don't want to see you." It was on Thursday that everything fell apart. I was leaving school, saying goodbye to the kids when I saw it. Black van, stopped at a strange angle. Men I didn't recognize. Bernardo's guards reacted first. Get back! Get back to the school!" But it was too late. The van opened. Men got out. With guns. Everything happened in slow motion and impossible speed at the same time. Screams, kids running, teachers pushing students inside, and me frozen, paralyzed, seeing a gun pointed at me. Then shots. Real shots. Not from a movie. Deafening sound that made my ears ring. Bernardo's men shooting. Rivals shooting back. Glass exploding. I fell to the ground, covering my head, and suddenly I was back on the plane. Metal breaking apart, screams, death all around. Violent flashback dragging me back to the plane, to the accident, to the terror I'd buried. "Dad!" I screamed, lost between present and past. "Dad, where are you?" Hands grabbed me, dragged me, voices shouting, but I couldn't process words. Just pure, absolute terror consuming everything. Then I was in a car. Movement. Sirens in the distance. And a voice I knew better than my own. Isla, look at me. Just look at me." I focused. Bernardo was in the back seat with me, holding my face, eyes desperate. "Bernardo," my voice came out small, broken. "I've got you. You're safe. No one hurts you. I promise. No one hurts you." And then I was crying, deep sobs that shook my entire body. He pulled me against his chest, holding tight, murmuring words in Italian I didn't understand, but calmed anyway. I thought I was going to die, and you'd never know that I couldn't finish sentences, trauma and fear too mixed up. "Shh," I know, Mia Cara. It's okay. I've got you. And I don't know how long it took to get wherever we were going. I just held him and let his presence anchor me back to reality. The property was like a fortress. High walls, guards at every corner, cameras everywhere. Beautiful prison, but still a prison. Bernardo guided me inside, hand on my back, leading me to an enormous room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a perfectly manicured garden. Is this... I looked around, processing slowly. Is this my life now? Hidden? Protected like a prisoner? He closed his eyes, pain crossing his face. No, not if I end this war. How? I turned to him. How do you end a war in your world? When he opened his eyes, there was something dark there, something that reminded me exactly who Bernardo Provazan was outside the island. The way I know how. You're going to kill them. It wasn't a question. I'm going to eliminate the threat permanently. And how many people die in the process? How many of your men? How many innocents who are in the wrong place at the wrong time? However many need to die to keep you alive. His voice was cold now, decision made. I don't care about the cost, Isla. Not when it comes to you. But I care. I took a step forward. I care that people are going to die because of me. That you're going to do terrible things and say it's to protect me. That makes me guilty. Makes me just as bad as me. He finished, bitter. You can say it, Isla. As bad as the monster. I wasn't going to say that, but you were thinking it. He turned away, looking out the window. And you're right. This is what I am, what I've always been. And you tried to warn me, tried to say I'd go back to being the monster. And here we are. Heavy silence fell between us. Two broken hearts recognizing impossible truth. You can stay here, he said finally, voice tired. Totally protected. You have everything you need. When the war's over, when the threat is eliminated, you can go. Go back to your life. Pretend none of this happened. And you? He didn't turn. I go back to being the boss, like I've always been. Like I'll always be. Bernardo, Vincent will stay on guard. Anything you need, just ask. He started to leave, each step seeming to hurt. Good night, Isla. Don't do this. My voice broke. Don't leave me again. He stopped at the door, hand on the frame, back still to me. Leaving you is the only way to love you. The only way not to destroy you completely. And then he was gone, leaving me in a gilded cage, protected but imprisoned, safe but dying inside. I collapsed on the expensive leather couch, looking around the perfect and empty room, and realized he was right about everything. Power had won. The real world had won. And us, what we had on the island, had been just a beautiful dream that was always destined to end. But knowing that didn't make it hurt less, didn't make losing him any less impossible to survive. Chapter 9, The Choice.
I choose us. Now.
3 nights at Bernardo's property. 3 nights hearing him leave in the morning and return late, smelling of cigarettes and tension. 3 nights of silence between us. Only presence through walls, distance maintained by fear and pain. Until the 4th night, when I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs in the early morning, looking for water, and saw light leaking from under the office door. Voices. Multiple voices. And one in particular I recognized above all. I approached silently. The door was ajar, just a crack, enough to see and hear without being seen. The room was full of men, 12, maybe 15, all armed, all looking at the huge table covered with maps, photos, documents, and in the center of it all, Bernardo. This is total war, boss. Vincent was beside him, expression serious. Are you sure? Absolutely. Bernardo's voice was cold, calculated, without emotion, exactly as it was before the island. They attacked a school. With children present, they crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I agree, but an operation this size, Vincent pointed at the map. We're talking about eliminating 5 different families, simultaneously. Casualties will be high, on both sides. I don't care about casualties. Bernardo tapped his finger on a photo. I care about results. And the result is all of them dead before they can try again. Some have children, boss. Families. They should have thought about that before. 0 hesitation. 0 humanity. Operation happens Friday. 48 hours. I want everyone ready. My blood froze. I was hearing Bernardo plan a massacre. Mass massacre. Dozens of people killed. Families destroyed. All for me. For my safety. To keep me alive. She stays safe, Bernardo continued. That's all that matters. I'll do whatever's necessary to guarantee that. Horror flooded me. This is me. Me making him go back to being the monster. Me causing deaths. Me transforming the man I loved back into the killer he always was. I couldn't watch anymore. I turned to leave, but my foot hit a decorative vase. The sound was small, but in that room full of paranoid criminals, it was loud as an alarm. "Someone's there!" Hard voice. Sound of guns being drawn. The door exploded open. 3 men surrounded me instantly, guns pointed, and then Bernardo was there, pushing everyone aside, eyes wide, seeing me. "Isla." My name came out strangled. "What are you... How much did you hear?" "Enough." My voice trembled, but I held firm. "I heard enough." "Isla, go back to your room. This isn't mine!" I entered the room, pushing past him, 12 armed men looking at me with shock. Woman in the war room. Unthinkable. It's completely mine. You're going to kill for my sake. Dozens of people. Entire families. For me. Isla, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I turned to him, tears of rage and horror burning. I understand you're going to become exactly the monster you ran from. I understand there'll be blood on your hands, blood that'll never come off, and I understand it's my fault. It's not your fault. Bernardo approached, ignoring the audience. They attacked first. They threatened you. This is an excuse to do what you've always done. I cut him off. Violence, death, power through fear, and you're using me as justification. The silence in the room was absolute. Vincent looked uncomfortable. The other men looked between us as if watching a bomb about to explode. "There's another way," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "There has to be." "There isn't." "Let me go." The words fell like a bomb. Bernardo froze. Vincent went pale. All the men seemed to hold their breath. "What?" Bernardo's voice came out so low I barely heard it. "If I disappear, with no apparent connection to you, no visible protection, I'm no longer a target." The words hurt to speak, but it made sense. Perfect, horrible sense. Without me, there's no reason to continue the war. You go back to normal. They back down. Everyone lives. No? Instant? Definitive? No, Isla! Don't even think about it! Bernardo, I said no! He grabbed me by the shoulders, fingers gripping. I won't lose you. Not again. Not like this. You've already lost me. I held his gaze. The moment you chose this. I gestured at the room, at the men, at the maps of death. Over us. He released me, as if burned. Took a step back, raw pain crossing his face. I love you. The words came out broken. I love you with everything I am, Bernardo. With every piece of me. Isla? But I can't live like this. Tears finally fell. I can't live looking over my shoulder. Can't live knowing people die to keep me safe. Can't live watching you kill a piece of yourself every time you kill for me. Then what do you want? He shouted, frustration and desperation exploding. Tell me! What do you want from me? You? I shouted back. Just you, Bernardo, the man from the island, the man who laughed with me, who protected me without violence, who was human. But not the boss, never the boss. Silence. Heavy, suffocating, impossible. Bernardo looked at me as if I'd asked for the impossible, and maybe I had. Then he turned, looked around the room, at the empire, at the loyal men, at the power he'd built in blood and fear, at the world that was all he knew, and looked at me, at love, at peace, at the future he'd never considered possible. I saw the exact moment of the decision, saw when something changed in his eyes, when the impossible choice was made. Boss? Vincent asked, uncertain. Long silence. Then, dismantle the operation. Shock ran through the room. What? Vincent looked incredulous. You heard me. Bernardo didn't take his eyes off me. Dismantle it. Cancel everything. The war is over. Boss, they won't just... They will. He finally turned to Vincent. Because I'm going to give them what they want. Giovanni's territory, businesses, everything, divided among the 5 families, peace through concession. You're going to give up territory? One of the men exploded. That's weakness. That's strategy, Bernardo countered. They want power. I give them power. War ends. Everyone lives, including you. And you? Vincent asked quietly. What happens to you? Bernardo looked at me, really looked at me. And when he spoke, his voice was loaded with emotion he'd never shown in front of the men. You want Bernardo, Isla? The man, not the boss? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Then help me kill him. Kill who? I whispered. The boss? The monster? Everything that made me who I am. Tears. Real tears shone in his eyes. Help me destroy Bernardo Provenzano so the man you love can finally exist. That means I couldn't finish. Abandoning everything. He made a sweeping gesture. Empire, power, name. Provenzano disappears. Forever. Boss, you're talking about, Vincent began, faking my death, passing the empire to you, disappearing completely. Bernardo turned to him. You take over. You've always been a better leader than me anyway. More diplomatic, less monstrous. I can't. You can, and you will. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Last order. Take care of them, of the businesses, of the families that depend on us. Make the peace I could never make. And you? Vincent asked, voice broken. You just disappear? I live. Bernardo looked at me. For the first time in my life, I actually live. With her. Away from all this. He turned to me, taking my hands. New life. New identities. A place where no one knows Bernardo Provenzano or Isla Russo. Just two people trying to be normal. Never the Mafia again. My voice trembled. Never violence again? Never again. He squeezed my hands. I promise. I promise you a life where I wake up without planning who to watch. Where I drink coffee without testing for poison. Where you don't need to look over your shoulder. Can you live like that? Because I needed to know. Needed to be sure. Without the power. Without the control. Without all this. He pulled my face closer, forehead against mine. With you? I can live any way. Without you. All the power in the world is worth nothing. You'd already decided, I realized. Even before I entered this room, you'd already decided. I decided the second I saw you at that school, he admitted, with a gun pointed at you. I thought I was going to lose you. And I realized no empire is worth watching you die. So yes, I'd already decided. I was just too scared to admit it. You'd do this? I could barely believe it. Actually give up everything? For me? I already did. He smiled. Small, but real. The second I decided losing you wasn't an option. The rest is just logistics. The operation took 2 weeks to plan. 2 weeks of absolute secrecy. Only Vincent knew everything. The others were informed gradually. Only what was necessary. Explosion at the warehouse. Big. Dramatic. Body charred beyond recognition. DNA confirmed. Through Vincent manipulating results. Public funeral. Vincent crying real tears for the loss of his best friend. The whole world watching the powerful boss Provenzano being buried. And me? I disappeared 3 days before. Fled in fear, the news reported. Couldn't handle the pressure of the criminal world. No one looked very hard. After all, why search? Bernardo was dead. I was no longer useful. It was perfect. And a week after the funeral, we were at a small airport with new passports, new names, new lives. Ready? He asked, holding my hand. No gold ring, no designer suit. Just jeans and a simple shirt. Just a man. Ready? I held back. Let's live, Bernardo. Daniel, he corrected with a smile. I'm Daniel now, and you're Sophia. Daniel and Sophia. I tested the names. I like it. Me too. He pulled me into a kiss. There, in the middle of the airport, without fear, without hiding. Let's go home, Sophia. And we went. Chapter 10. New Beginning.
We're safe. Together.
6 months later, I woke to the sound of waves and the smell of fresh coffee. Sunlight entered through the open windows of our little house, illuminating simple white walls and furniture, few but sufficient. Portugal, small coast, village, where no one asked much, and everyone cared just enough to be friendly without being invasive. Perfect. I stretched in bed, smiling, seeing his side empty, but still warm. Daniel, not Bernardo. I needed to remember that. He was Daniel now, local carpenter. Quiet man who made beautiful furniture and smiled more than he talked. I put on simple clothes and went downstairs. And there he was, in the tiny kitchen, making coffee the way I'd learned to like it. Strong, no sugar, with that Italian ritual he insisted was the only correct way. Good morning? I wrapped around him from behind, fitting perfectly against his back. Good morning, mia cara. He turned, pulling me into a slow kiss. Sleep well? I always sleep well. It was true. No nightmares. No waking in panic, just deep sleep and peace. You? Perfectly. He handed me a cup. Today I have to finish the table for the Santos family. You? Class with the kids in the morning. Afternoon free. I blew on the hot coffee. Can we walk on the beach? Always. His smile was different now. Lighter, more real, as if he'd finally learned how to smile without calculating angles. Our routine was simple, so absurdly simple that sometimes I still caught myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it never fell. It was just life. Normal, beautiful, peaceful life. He worked in the small workshop he'd set up behind the house. Hands that once held weapons now shaped wood with artistic precision. He discovered talent he never knew he had. The village people loved his work. Tables, chairs, shelves, everything made with care that bordered on reverence. I taught English to local children 3 mornings a week. Payment was minimal, but sufficient, and seeing little faces light up when they finally understood a verb or difficult pronunciation, worth more than any salary. In the afternoon, it was our time. We walked on the beach, cooked together, read, talked about everything and nothing. Sometimes we just sat in silence, appreciating each other's company. It was everything I'd always wanted, everything he never knew he needed. "Sophia!" His voice called me from the workshop on a Wednesday afternoon. I ran there, still getting used to responding to that name. He was standing beside a huge table, beautiful, dark wood polished to a shine. I finished, pride obvious in his voice. "What do you think?" "It's beautiful." I ran my fingers over the impeccable surface. "You have real talent, you know that?" "I learned from the best." He approached, hugging me from behind. "YouTube has excellent tutorials." I laughed. "Very different from learning to command an empire." "Infinitely better." He kissed my neck. "No one dies if I ruin a table." "Happy?" I asked, turning in his arms. I asked this frequently, needed to be sure. "Never thought I would be," he admitted, eyes honest. "I spent my whole life thinking power was everything, that control was the only way to be safe, but it was just emptiness, trying to fill emptiness. And now you fill it. Simple, honest, true. This here, this life, you fill it in ways power never filled." "Do you miss it?" I had to ask. "The power, the fear, being the boss?" He was quiet, really considering. "Sometimes I miss the certainty of knowing exactly who I was, even if it was a monster. But then I look at you, at this life, at the man I've become, and I realize I prefer uncertainty with you to certainty alone." Tears burned my eyes. "I love you." "I love you too." He wiped the tear that escaped. "More than anything. The wedding was his idea. Small. Just us, the village's local priest, and 2 fishermen as witnesses. I didn't have an elaborate white dress, just a simple summer dress, white and light, flowers from the market in my hair. He wore a white shirt and dark pants. No suit, no luxury, just 2 people promising life together. The ceremony was in the small chapel, overlooking the sea. When it came time for vows, I held his hands and spoke from the heart. "You saved me on the island." My voice trembled, but I continued. "Literally saved me from dying, but more than that, you saved me from an empty life, from pretending to be someone I wasn't, from never really living." Tears ran down his face silently. "And I saved you from the abyss, from the monster you were becoming, from the empire that was going to devour you." I smiled through tears. "So, I guess we're even." He laughed, a wet sound of emotion. Then, his vows. "I promised to be the man you saw when no one else did." Voice firm, despite the tears. "The man from the island, the man who laughs, who loves, who is human. I promise every day to choose this. Choose you. Choose us over everything else. I promise never to go back to what I was, never let power define me, never forget that the greatest power is loving you completely." Pause, smile through tears. "I promise to be Daniel, always, forever." The kiss was salty with tears, sweet with promises, and perfect in ways I had no words to describe. Small reception at the local tavern, wine, simple food, laughter with neighbors who'd become friends. No luxury, no ostentation, just pure joy. The threat came 3 weeks after the wedding, not from enemies, but from a past we thought we'd left behind completely. We were on the beach, sunset painting everything in gold, when a man approached. Early 60s, gray hair, a walk I immediately recognized as military. Daniel tensed beside me. "Matteo Provizin." The man stopped at a respectful distance. "Or should I call you Daniel now?" My heart raced. He knew. Someone knew. "I thought you were dead," Matteo continued, eyes assessing. "Beautiful funeral?" I cried. "You know, had respect for you, even though we were rivals." "I am dead," Daniel said calmly. "This man is Daniel. Carpenter, husband. Just that." Matteo looked at me, really looked, saw my hand in his, saw the simple ring, saw how we were together, connected in ways that went beyond physical. Love made you give up. It wasn't a question. It was understanding. Love made me live, Daniel corrected. Difference. Power kept me existing. She made me alive. Long silence. Waves breaking. Seagulls screaming. Tension in the air as we waited for a decision that could destroy everything. Then, Mateo extended his hand. Secret dies with me. You did what I didn't have the courage to do. Daniel shook his hand, relief evident. Why? Why not expose me? Because I envy you, Mateo admitted. I spent my whole life in the game. Lost family, lost my soul, and never had the courage to leave. You did. So yes, I envy and respect. He turned to leave, but stopped. Be happy, Provezan, or Daniel. Be whoever you are now, and never look back. Then he left, and we never saw him again. I found out 2 weeks later. Morning sickness that wouldn't pass. Inexplicable fatigue, and an obvious absence that made my heart jump. Pharmacy test. Hands shaking. Daniel holding my other hand. 2 longest minutes of my life. 2 lines. Light, pink, but unmistakable. Positive, I whispered, not believing. It's positive. Daniel pulled me against him, holding so tight I could barely breathe. But I didn't care, just held back, crying with pure joy. I told him officially that night, on the beach, our place, where everything began in a way. Daniel, I held his hands. I'm pregnant. He fell to his knees in the sand, hands automatically going to my belly that still didn't show anything, eyes shining with tears. A family, voice broken with emotion. A real family, not empire, not business. Real family. You're going to be a great father. I ran my fingers through his hair. I'll try. He looked up, raw vulnerability on his face. I'll be better than mine was. I promise. Our child will grow up with love, not fear. With peace, not violence. With a present father, not a ghost. I know. I knelt down, kneeling with him. You're already better, just for wanting to be. 2 years later, Marina was 1.5 years. Dark hair like her father, green eyes like mine, and a smile that lit up everything. She was in the sand now, building something that was supposedly a castle but looked more like a misshapen mound. Daddy, look, she shouted, proud. Beautiful, Piccola, Daniel responded from our spot under the umbrella. Best castle I've ever seen. I was lying against him, head on his shoulder, watching our daughter play. Peace, complete, absolute, perfect peace. Do you regret it? I asked. I asked this frequently, our ritual now. What? He kissed my head. Trading empire for this? For you? For her? For this life? Dramatic pause. Then, never. Even without the power? I have power. He squeezed my shoulder. I have you. I have Marina. I have peace I never knew could exist. That's power, real power, not fake empire built on fear. That's cheesy, I teased. That's truth. He turned me, kissing with tenderness that still made me melt.
Writing this story was delicious in every single moment. Let's be honest, the premise itself is irresistible. Forced to live together, she hates him and he's cold, with a dark secret. Is it just me who loves that? I'm sure it's not, because I have you the ones who always follow me through my stories. This community of darlings is incredible. But let's keep that our little secret. I want you to know that every scene was crafted to make you feel the cold, the hunger, the shivers, and the forbidden's attraction slowly growing. Slow burn delivered. And this story isn't just about survival and love. It's about resisting what scares us until we realize it might be exactly what saves us. Until next time, darling.